Welcome back, my fellow strangers, to another episode of Traversing the Strange World. And I'm your co-host, Isaiah Danbury. All right, everybody, welcome back to this very first Thursday segment. We're going to call it the Thursday Journal, Notes from the Strange World. So you can think about it as an audio journal. The journal of a modern man living in a strange land. Mondays will be for getting focused for the week, a little bit of motivation / discipline, mindfulness, and these Thursday segments, these will be from my journal, from my ponderings about things encompassing God and the human predicament. So I thought I would start out this whole thing with... I wanted to start this out with something mythic, but also very deeply human. There's this archetypal trend that academics throughout time have identified. Within myth, within various story narratives, we have this lone masculine archetype. Not loneliness or isolation for isolation's sake, but separation. The ancient pattern where a man is pulled away from the noise so he can face himself, so he can reflect, and so he can be initiated. When we see it in the old stories, the man who leaves the village and enters the wilderness, not because he hates people, but because he's being shaped into something he couldn't become in the crowd. And if you've ever felt like you've been in a season like that, where you feel separated, where you can't explain it to people, where you don't even fully understand it yourself, well, maybe this one's for you. So let us go over this narrative archetype. Let us ponder and reflect upon what does that say about the human condition? What does it say about us in the times that we pull away? What is some of the light and the strength that we can glean from those moments? So here we go, my fellow strangers. What is the solitary masculine? The lone masculine archetype. An archetype is not merely a personality trait. It's a pattern of being that repeats across time. A spiritual shape, so to speak. A psychological blueprint. Something nature keeps carving into different men in different centuries. And the solitary masculine is this. The man who separates from the crowd, not because he hates people, but because he himself is being shaped. This archetype shows up when a man feels called inward. Called towards discipline, called to confront himself, called to become something more than what the group can approve of. And as a personality type, the solitary masculine often looks like quiet intensity, independence, self-reliance, inner resolve, mystery, emotional privacy, discomfort with superficiality, a strong preference for the real over the popular. This is the man who doesn't merely want connection, he wants the truth. And truth often demands solitude. So why does myth care about this type of man? Because myth doesn't just tell stories. They reveal truths about the human soul. And myth has always been known for this. Before a man can lead the tribe, before he can love properly, before he can build a kingdom, before he can become a father in the deepest sense, he must endure a lonely season. Because solitude is where illusion dies. Solitude is where weakness gets exposed. Solitude is where a man discovers what he actually believes, not what he was told to believe. This is why the solitary masculine becomes one of the great mythic pillars. The man who enters the wilderness and comes out transformed. He goes out into the unknown and returns back to the known, changed. And that's why the solitary archetype is so important in myth. He is the man being initiated. Now I want to show you how universal this is, because you can change the culture, you can change the clothing, you can change the language, but the solitary masculine, this lone masculine archetype, it keeps showing up. Moses went into exile. Moses went into exile and then climbs the mountain alone and receives the 10 Commandments. Elijah flees into the wilderness where despair and revelation, he encounters them both. John the Baptist lives outside the system, calling people to truth. Jesus goes alone into the wilderness to fast and face temptation, and then that's the beginning of his ministry. And there's something important here. In Scripture, the wilderness is not just geographical. It's psychological realm. The wilderness is where a man is stripped down to what's real. Odysseus separated from everything familiar and was made into a new man through that. The wandering hero across cultures also always faces the lonely road. The hermit sage who lives away from the city holding wisdom. That's your archetypal John the Baptist. The warrior who trains alone before returning to defend or restore order. Think of Mufasa from The Lion King. Ronin, lone samurai. They are not simply alone, but morally forged outside of the cultural comfort zone. The monk separating from noise to sharpen the soul. What are some ways that maybe we see this lone masculine archetype showing its face in our culture today and in our stories today? Let me know, my fellow strangers. So what does this archetype symbolize? The solitary masculine symbolizes the idea that you cannot become deep without leaving the shallow world. The solitude is a rite, a passage, a death of the old self, so to speak. In Jungian terms, the wilderness is the unconscious mind. It is where fear lives, desire lives, shame lives, power lives, demons live, the genius live, which means the solitary masculine symbolizes inner confrontation, not with society, but with yourself. But here's the warning inside the symbolism. The man who goes alone can either become the monk or the monster. Because solitude is a magnifier. It amplifies whatever is already there. If the man has discipline, solitude becomes a safe haven and a forge. If he lacks discipline, solitude becomes a prison. So the solitary masculine also symbolizes something haunting. The war between wisdom and bitterness. Solitary masculine is not meant to stay solitary forever. In myth, the solitary hero returns, and he returns with strength, insight, steadiness, the power to protect, and the maturity to love. A man leaves the tribe to become a man and returns to serve the tribe as a man. If he does not return, he becomes incomplete. So if you're in a solitary season right now, my fellow strangers, I want you to understand something. This might not be you falling off. This might be initiation. But don't waste your wilderness. Don't let the solitude become a place where your heart freezes. Let it be a place where your spirit sharpens, where you become dangerous in the right way. Because the solitary masculine is not the man who disappears forever. He is the man who disappears and comes back with fire. He goes out into the unknown and returns to the known territory, changed. All right, my fellow strangers, I hope you enjoyed this first segment of the Thursday Journal, Notes from the Strange World. Let me know if you have ever went through a time of deep solitude, and did you bring back something that you understood deeper about yourself, that perhaps you understood deeper about society, about culture. Or maybe perhaps you discovered something that maybe words can't describe. Something bigger than that. Let me know, my fellow strangers. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe too while you're at it. Alright, until next time, let's keep traversing this strange world. Let's always be inquisitive. Let's always be curious. We're just kind of thrown into this life thing, so let's remember being neighborly to folks, because at the end of the day, we're all just strangers in a strange land. Until next time, peace.
This is the outro. See you next time, strangers.